I knew something was wrong before I even pulled into the driveway, because the first thing I saw when I turned off Seabreeze Canyon Road wasn't my house. It was a cement truck backing out of my property like it belonged there. I hit the brakes so hard my coffee flew into the passenger seat, and for maybe 3 full seconds I just sat there staring, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. My brick driveway, the one my grandfather laid by hand back in '89, every red clay brick leveled with a rubber mallet while I handed him tools as a kid, was gone. Completely buried under a slab of smooth gray concrete still wet enough to shine in the afternoon sun. There were workers loading up equipment, traffic cones near my mailbox, and taped to my front door was a bright white envelope with my name on it like somebody thought this was all perfectly normal. I opened it standing right there in the gravel shoulder and read, Community Exterior Improvement Initiative. Balance due for $1,300. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, more because when something is so unbelievably arrogant, your brain rejects it for a second. My name's Ethan Mercer. I'm 44. I restore vintage motorcycles in a detached garage outside Carmel Bay. And I live in a cedar craftsman cottage tucked inside a neighborhood full of oversized Spanish-style villas with imported tile roofs and designer landscaping. My place doesn't match theirs and never has. It belonged to my parents before me, and legally my parcel was carved out decades before the Homeowners Association ever existed. I own it outright. No duas. No committee approvals. No architectural reviews. Just my land and my mortgage-free little corner of the coast. The problem was some people in that neighborhood hated that, especially Vanessa Caldwell. Vanessa was 56, chaired the HOA design board, dressed like every day was a photo shoot, and had a habit of smiling while saying things sharp enough to leave scars. She'd been on me for years. Said my workshop disrupted the aesthetic flow. Said the bikes parked out front looked industrial. Once she emailed half the neighborhood calling my driveway visually inconsistent with community standards, which was funny considering community standards stopped exactly at my property line. I found a contractor before he could leave. Big guy named Marco, sunburned neck, looked uncomfortable the second I walked up. I asked him one question. Who authorized this? He pulled a clipboard from his truck, flipped 2 pages, and pointed to his signature. Vanessa Caldwell. Scope of work. Entryway beautification phase 1. My driveway listed by address. I asked him if he knew he'd just poured concrete on private property. He went pale. Said he was told the HOA owned access rights, and this was approved through committee. I told him, well, somebody lied to you. Then I went inside and pulled every land record I had. Deed, survey, county map. Spread them across my kitchen table. Checked every line twice. Same answer every time. The driveway was mine, all the way from my front gate to the road bend. And that's when I noticed something I'd somehow never fully appreciated before. My driveway wasn't just my driveway. It was the only paved exit route for the neighborhood sanitation trucks. Years ago, the HOA's rear access road got permanently blocked after federal coastal marsh protections shut down development behind the hill. Since then, every commercial trash truck entered through the community and crossed the edge of my parcel before reaching the highway. 3 trucks every pickup day. More than 300 homes, depending on that route. 12 years, and nobody had ever asked permission. No easement filed. No written access agreement. Nothing. Just routine and assumption and entitlement piled up year after year until Vanessa apparently believed she could pave over family history and send me the bill. I remember standing at my kitchen sink looking out over that ugly slab of fresh concrete and feeling strangely calm. Not angry anymore. Anger burns hot and fast. This felt colder than that. More focused. Like finally seeing a chessboard after somebody thought they'd already won. Monday morning, I called a local ironworks shop in Pacific Grove. By noon, a black wrought iron gate was being installed right at the edge of my parcel. Heavy hinges, steel lockbox, keypad access, clean and solid. The workers asked if I wanted decorative scrollwork. I said no. Keep it simple. Functional. Then I drafted a certified letter and had copies delivered to the HOA office, Vanessa's front door, and the management company. Private access revoked pending restoration of unauthorized construction. Property damage assessment, $42,000. Future access, terms negotiable upon receipt of payment. That was it. No srets, no insats, just paper and fax. Thursday morning at 6:10, I heard diesel engines outside. First trash truck rolled up, stopped at the gate, then another behind it. Backup beepers started chirping. I poured coffee and watched from my kitchen window, while drivers climbed out looking confused. About 5 minutes later, Vanessa's white SUV came flying down the lane. She got out in heels and a linen blazer and marched straight to my porch, pounding hard enough to shake the frame. "Ethan," she shouted, "open this door right now." I stayed exactly where I was. Took another sip. She kept banging. "This is unacceptable." I almost answered, almost, but I didn't. Eventually, she stormed back to the trucks and started waving her arms like she could physically argue with a locked gate. By noon, the trucks were gone. By sunset, the dumpsters near the clubhouse were already overflowing. And I had a feeling the neighborhood was about to discover something Vanessa Caldwell had clearly forgotten. People can ignore one house that doesn't match the neighborhood for years. But nobody ignores trash piling up in 90-degree coastal heat. By Friday morning, the whole neighborhood smelled like low tide gone bad. And if you've ever lived near the California coast in the middle of summer, you know exactly what that means. It wasn't just garbage, it was seafood scraps baking in heat, wet cardboard fermenting, somebody's landscaping waste turning sour under direct sun, all of it drifting through those manicured little streets like nature had decided to humble everybody at once. I rolled open the garage around 8 and got back to work on a 1972 Triumph Bonneville I'd been restoring for a client in Big Sur, trying not to enjoy the timing too much, but it was hard not to notice how fast the neighborhood mood changed. Friday afternoon, my phone started buzzing. Text from my friend Caleb 2 streets over asking, "Did you lock the trucks out?" Then another from Mrs. Whitmore near the tennis courts. "Do you know what's happening?" I ignored both. By sunset, the HOA Facebook page had gone from photos of landscaping and dinner reservations to full-blown panic. People posting pictures of overflowing compactors. Somebody asked why seagulls were circling the pool deck. Another person blamed the sanitation company. Vanessa stayed completely silent. That told me more than anything. If she thought she could spin this, she would have already been typing. Saturday got worse. The heat climbed into the 90s, and the smell settled low between the houses like a wet blanket. The neighborhood's infinity pool started getting complaints because flies were gathering around the edge. Kids didn't want to swim. Tennis courts looked like a swarm had moved in. Around lunchtime, I walked to my mailbox and passed 2 residents standing beside a golf cart whispering. They stopped talking when they saw me. Then one of them gave me that awkward little nod people do when they know a story but aren't sure how much they should admit. I nodded back, kept walking. About an hour later, Vanessa finally showed up. This time she didn't pound. She stood at the edge of my driveway in oversized sunglasses and called out like she was trying to remain dignified. "Ethan, can we please discuss this like adults?" I wiped grease off my hands with a rag and walked halfway down the path. "Sure." She gestured at the gate. "This is creating a serious sanitation issue." "Actually," I said, "pouring concrete on someone else's land created the issue. The gate is just the consequence." She gave me the practice smile. "The board believed we had access rights. The board believed wrong. We can revisit the paperwork." "Great. Bring $42,000 with it." Her jaw tightened. "You can't be serious." "I'm very serious. You're hurting everyone because of a misunderstanding." "No," I said. "You hurt everyone because you thought you could take something that wasn't yours and nobody would push back." She stared at me for a second, like she wanted to say something ugly, then got back in her SUV and peeled off. Sunday morning was chaos. I woke up to gulls screaming and looked out the back window to see black garbage bags stacked beside the compactors because residents had run out of space. The smell had spread all the way to the clubhouse patio. The management company shut the clubhouse doors and taped signs to the windows. "Pool temporarily closed." I heard later the yoga instructor walked out halfway through class because flies kept landing on people. By afternoon, a rumor started circulating that the sanitation company was threatening breach of contract penalties. Another rumor said Vanessa had emergency board meetings all weekend. Then Monday came. And with Monday came the delegation. Vanessa arrived just before noon with two men. One was a lawyer named Adrian Bell, expensive navy suit, silver tie clip, polished shoes that definitely weren't made for gravel. The other was Howard Gaines, retired investment banker and HOA treasurer, the kind of guy who always looked mildly offended even when ordering lunch. I met them at the gate. Adrian introduced himself and got straight to business. "Mr. Mercer, we're here in good faith to resolve this." "Good," I said. "Then you brought payment." Howard cleared his throat. "We prefer a practical solution. I prefer my driveway." Adrian held up a folder. "The HOA is willing to remove the concrete immediately at no cost." "No," Vanessa folded her arms. "Ethan, payment first." Adrian tried the legal voice. "Calm. Controlled. Blocking essential service vehicles may expose you to liability." I actually laughed. "Interesting. Which easement are you referring to?" He paused. Tiny pause, but I saw it. Then he said, "Access has been established through years of use. That's not recorded county access. That's convenience." Howard stepped in. "We're prepared to discuss a compromise." "Great." I handed him my printed terms. $42,000 for restoration and damages. $1,800 monthly access license. 20-year renewable agreement. Liability on HOA. Maintenance on HOA. Howard read halfway down and blinked. Vanessa snapped. "This is extortion." I looked directly at her. "No, extortion is billing me after paving over my grandfather's work." Adrian's expression changed then. Less aggressive, more calculating. He understood the leverage. They left without signing anything. Tuesday was the breaking point. County health inspectors showed up after residents started filing complaints. By noon, bright orange notices were posted near the compactor station. Daily sanitation fines. $1,000 each day until resolved. And because some genius residents had started hauling trash in pickup trucks to dump near beach bins outside the neighborhood, coastal enforcement got involved too. The irony was incredible. Vanessa wanted the neighborhood prettier, and suddenly they had inspectors, citations, gulls, flies, and a pool nobody could use. Late that afternoon, Caleb came by with iced coffee and leaned against the fence grinning. "You know they're losing their minds, right?" "I assume." Vanessa yelled at a board member in the parking lot. Whole thing looked like reality TV. I laughed. First real laugh in days. Then he looked at the driveway and asked quietly, "That brick meant a lot to you?" I stared at the concrete. "My grandfather laid every piece. Used to say if you build something slow enough and honest enough, it'll outlive arguments." Caleb nodded. Looks like he was right. Wednesday morning, I was tightening down a fuel tank when I heard tires in the driveway. One vehicle. Vanessa's SUV. No lawyer. No treasurer. Just her. She stepped out carrying a leather folder, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked tired. No polished. No performance. Just tired. She walked up to the gate and held out an envelope. "Cashier's checks," she said. $42,000 for restoration. $10,800 for the first 6 months of access. The board approved the contract. I opened the folder. Checks were real. Contract signed. Maintenance clause included. Liability included. There was also one more document. A formal apology for the community newsletter acknowledging unauthorized work on private property and rescinding the original invoice completely. I looked up. Vanessa avoided eye contact. Then she said quietly, "The landscaping team will also install privacy palms along your western fence at HOA expense, if you still want them." It was probably the closest thing to humility I was ever going to get. I unlocked the gate, pulled it wide. Less than 10 minutes later, all 3 garbage trucks came roaring through like emergency vehicles. Drivers didn't even stop. Straight to the compactor station. Residents came outside to watch like some bizarre parade. And standing there with diesel engines rumbling past and gulls scattering overhead, I realized the whole neighborhood had just learned something nobody on that board had expected. Control looks impressive right up until it runs headfirst into ownership. The neighborhood got quiet after that, quieter than I'd ever heard it, honestly. Once the trucks emptied everything out and the smell finally started fading back toward the ocean where it belonged, people slipped back into their routines. Pool chairs filled up again, tennis courts reopened, delivery vans came and went, and from the outside, everything looked normal, but it didn't feel normal anymore. There was this strange pause hanging in the air, like everybody had suddenly become aware that property lines weren't decorative little markings on paper. They actually meant something. For the next few days, I stayed busy in the garage, mostly because turning a wrench gave my mind somewhere useful to go. A man from Santa Cruz picked up the Triumph. Caleb stopped by with burgers and joked that I'd become a neighborhood legend. Mrs. Whitmore waved at me from her card, and for the first time in years, actually smiled instead of pretending not to notice my place. Then, Thursday afternoon, a landscaping crew arrived and planted 6 queen palms along the western edge of my property, exactly like the agreement said. I stood on the porch watching them dig, and had to admit, Vanessa chose them well. Tall enough for privacy, enough space between trunks to still catch the afternoon light. It looked good, better than I expected. That evening, the HOA newsletter hit everyone's inboxes. Caleb forwarded me screenshots with about 15 laughing emojis. There it was in writing from the board itself. The association acknowledges unauthorized exterior work completed on privately held property and apologizes for any inconvenience caused. Inconvenience. I read that twice and laughed out loud, standing in my kitchen. My grandfather would have loved that word. He had this habit when I was young of shrugging at ridiculous things and saying, "Well, that's one way to describe a train wreck." I could practically hear him saying it. The concrete stayed. A few people asked if I planned to rip it up and rebuild the brick. I thought about it. More than once. I even got estimates. But every time I walked out there with a tape measure, I stopped. Because, weirdly enough, I wanted to keep it. That smooth gray slab became a reminder, not of losing something, but of exactly how easy it is for people with authority to mistake convenience for ownership and politeness for permission. My grandfather's bricks were buried under there, still part of the foundation, still mine. And somehow, I liked knowing that. Like history doesn't disappear just because somebody covers it up and hopes nobody objects. About 2 weeks later, I saw Vanessa for the first time since she brought the checks. I was watering the palms near sunset when she came walking down the lane by herself. No clipboard, no designer sunglasses, just jeans and a light sweater with the ocean wind blowing hair across her face. She stopped near the mailbox and looked at the driveway for a second. Then she said, "For what it's worth, I was wrong." No speech, no excuse, just that. I set the hose down and nodded. "Yeah." She gave a tired little laugh. "You know, the board still talks about you like you staged a hostile takeover. That's generous." I just locked the gate. She smiled at that, barely. Then she looked toward the palms. "They do look nice." "They do." She tucked her hands in her pockets. I really thought I was helping the neighborhood. I believed her. That was the weird part. I think she actually did believe aesthetics and uniformity mattered enough to justify pushing boundaries. And maybe that's how a lot of these fights start. Not with cartoon villains, but with people so convinced they know what's best they stop asking where their authority ends. Before she left, she glanced back once and said, "You made your point." Ian said, "Oh." I just protected my property. The point made itself. She nodded and kept walking. Haven't had a problem since. The HOA trucks use the access road under contract now. Payments hit automatically every month. The gate stays unlocked on pickup days and closed the rest of the time. The palms grew in beautifully, and that driveway still catches the evening sun in a way the old brick used to. Just different. Maybe not prettier, but honest. Sometimes I stand out there with a cup of coffee and think about how fast the whole thing escalated because somebody assumed ownership where there wasn't any, and how quickly power shifts when paperwork meets consequences. The truth is communities need rules. Most neighbors mean well, but there's a thin line between maintaining standards and forgetting somebody else's property isn't yours to redesign. Vanessa wanted uniformity. She wanted the neighborhood to feel polished and seamless and curated. What she ended up giving everyone was a very expensive lesson in independence because the one house she wanted hidden the most turned out to be the one route everybody needed. And I'll be honest, part of me still smiles every Thursday morning when I hear those garbage trucks rolling through that gate. So now I'm curious. If you were in my position, Would you have reopened that gate when she came back with the checks? Or would you have left them sitting in their own mess a little longer? And have you ever dealt with an HOA, a neighbor, or anyone in your community crossing a line and acting like your property somehow belonged to them? Drop your story in the comments. Tell me who was right and who went too far. Because around here, everybody's got an opinion once ownership and pride start colliding.